Welcome to High Road to You. This is Mark Stofer, and I wanted to share something with you that I run into quite often. When I am trying to navigate a project and I get prices that are all over the map, the current project, the price range was, getting $90,000 bids and then a $32,000 bid. And then navigating the background of the company and looking at their vehicles, observing their crew, being on a job that they might be on, and seeing how they synchronize. All of this stuff comes into play. We did hire the company that is doing a great job, amazing job. They're going to be our go-to company for landscape construction, building out these water parks. And it's very exciting because I feel like I can walk away. Usually I want to be on the job when we first one there and the last one to leave to make sure that everybody's synchronizing, and I can keep material, kind of stay ahead of them, and make sure that if they need a gate opening, or they need something that might be in their way and hinder them from making the progress and interrupting their flow state, then I want to be there for that reason. But this crew is just amazing. So I feel this is going on 3.5 years, a project that should have taken 6 months, 8 months. My point is this, though, is that when people come into a situation, specifically when you're on the other side of the fence, and this happened recently. I went to Hawaii to help a dear friend, and we met with his wife, went out to dinner because he was working with the crew and he was just trying to get finished. He had to get a final so they get this loan, and they were bootstrapping this thing, but ultimately when they get the final, they can get a conventional loan. But they were, far from getting the final because it was probably 1.5 years out. But we went out to dinner, and his wife was like so excited. She's like, so glad that you guys are here. She's saying, so we're so glad you're here. I can't wait to have Thanksgiving in the house. And we were there in September, and she was thinking that we were going to be done in November. And I said, are you thinking about this year, this November, like having? And she goes, yeah. And I said, with the finish work and all the material that you have purchased, you would be lucky to get in the house 1.5 years from now, with the type of finish work that you're wanting or expecting. And I think she knew that, really, honestly. And that's my point, is that it's a setup, right? If you buy into that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and it's not necessary. The kind of finish work, we knew that it took 5 times longer with a skilled crew of people that do that day in and day out. And we looked at her, and we looked at. I was there with a contractor buddy, and we looked at each other and we laughed. We said, well, that's wishful thinking, but that's never going to happen. She just had this disappointed look on her face, and I thought, really, you can't think that we're that stupid, right? And so I experienced that all the time growing up with my grandmother. Would have contractors come in and look at a job, and then she would just lowball it like that's a reasonable expectation. And sometimes, eventually some contractor, not knowing his skill set to that level of understanding what it would take on the job, and then he would leave with deep remorse because he'd be losing his ass. And that was kind of the expectation, if you will. That's just the way my grandmother operated. But ultimately, it's when somebody comes to the table and they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no concept of every job is time cost, material cost, labor cost, frustration cost. Frustration is the biggest cost. And when you underbid a project, it causes a lot of stress. And there was a situation with my wife at the time, and her stepbrother, who was a plumber, and he says, I'm going to do this job, and he gave us a bid. It was half the cost of the lowest bid. And I took her side and I said, that's not possible. We're not going to let him do that. And we're going to show him the bids, and so he has an idea. And she goes, absolutely not. He wants to bless us. And she walked away, don't say anything. And I really regret not stopping everything right then and there and addressing that elephant in the room, because his crew would come out and they took me aside and said, hey, look, your brother-in-law, he's losing his ass, and we're here, we're not on payroll, we're just trying to help him finish his job. And we kept having to call him like, hey, you got to finish the job, and he would be on other jobs where he was making money. And then my wife at the time would be like throwing up. She couldn't drive, calling her mom, and calling everybody in the family that he was taking advantage of us. And I thought, it turned the tables on him trying to help us out. But ultimately, I had to come forward and say, here's what happened. Your bid was half the cost of the lowest bid, and I should have brought that to your attention, and we should have discussed what is reasonable and fair, and so that nobody gets the short end of the stick. But ultimately, he was just anxious. He had a new company, put it on the books, and be part of something, then get kind of like his company going. But it really did work against him, and it was really painful for me to watch. And I regret not being more forthright and say, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to sit down and we're going to look at these numbers, and we're going to look at what it's going to take. Yeah, he did want to bless us, but ultimately it became a curse because we were trying to get a final. So my point is this, is that when you're looking at anything, doing work with somebody, nobody gets the short end of the stick, and nobody's going to be unrealistic about what it's going to take to get the job done. And so I'm very selective about the contractors that I work with, because I work with people that are specialized in a certain area and they're good at what they do, and I can go out to their job site before I bring them on and see how they work and see the quality of their work, and then get an idea of their price is reasonable and fair. It's getting prices for $90,000. There's no way I'm going to pay $90,000 for that job, because I know what it takes, and that's gouging, right? When things is supply and demand. I knew somebody that was doing the drop tile ceilings, and he was bragging that he could bid these jobs like 5-10 times what it should normally cost, because people were just desperate to get that work done so they can move into that boutique suite, whatever, so they can get their business up and running. So that happens, and they said, hey, we're so busy, we throw bids out there that make no sense at all, but when people take it because they're just anxious to get the job done, we're making a killing. And that's I'm not sure how far you can go with that and feel right about it, but ultimately, that's how the market works sometimes, and I just know that that's not the way I like to play, especially when they say, if you're gonna, consider this bid, you have a day to make up your mind, because our calendar's full, and that's not a good way to do business. So, it's a challenge. With material inflation, supply chain issues, nobody wants to work. All of these things come into play, but ultimately it's time costs, material costs, labor costs, and the other cost is frustration costs. And those are the 4 costs that basically are involved in everything you do. I don't care if you're going to build a chair or a skyscraper. Those are the 4 costs involved. And I would tell you that the frustration cost is the biggest cost. So with that, buyer beware. That's what I'm saying. Have a great day.